This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Dozens of people, including students, still unaccounted for after gunmen attack a public school in Nigeria. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls for a fair COVID-19 vaccine distribution plan. And archaeologists unearth an ancient Egyptian brewery believed to be 5,000 years old. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also ahead this hour. Former employees of South Africa Express team up to buy the troubled airline. And coming up in sports, Seiko Hashimoto is the new president of the Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee. Let's start the program in Nigeria, where a student has been killed and at least 42 people remain abducted following Wednesday's attack on a school in north-central Niger State. Now, local officials say at least 27 students are among those still missing. This latest attack comes just days after gunmen attacked a bus belonging to the Niger State Transport Authority and kidnapped at least 21 passengers. Well, let's get you more on these latest developments. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza has been following this story. Phil, a very distressing story as it is. What is the latest, particularly on those that are still unaccounted for in this abduction?
Well, thank you, Lindy. At the moment, there's been a list of all the abductees released so that, family, relatives, and the government and citizens as well can know exactly who were abducted. So the list of 27 students have been put out. 3 staff members and 12 of their family members have also been released. And then the student that was shot dead, his name is Benjamin Habila. He's also in the news. And so the government is also saying that the whereabouts of the abductees is something that they are actually focused on at the moment. There are several agencies, security agencies, working together to ensure that they get these abductees, and of course know the location of the perpetrators of these acts as well, because that was an order that was given by President Muhammadu Buhari, and he actually sent his service chiefs to go to Niger State and coordinate the operation. So all hands on deck, according to the government, to ensure that this would happen swiftly and all the abductees released and rescued back to their families.
Well, Phil, of course, this is not, really far from the first time that we've seen an incident of this nature. What more can government do to enhance security and prevent these abductions, particularly at schools, from happening again?
Thank you, Lydie. As a matter of fact, we've been speaking to a couple of security experts, and they say that, yes, it has happened before now. In fact, in the case of Chibok, Dapchi, Kankara, that's in Katsina State just about 3 months ago, and now Kagara in Niger State. It's a very sad moment for the education sector, because these attacks are targeted at school students trying to, get basic education. And so it's going to be very, very discouraging for lots of parents and guardians who are in these northern regions trying their best to see how their students can go through school. And so the government will need to do more than just rescue these students or abductees. Kidnapping is, according to security experts, it's becoming a lucrative business. You see kidnappers even from different parts of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, coming to these parts to perpetrate this crime because they think they can get away with it. And so the government will need to do more to not just rescue these children or students or abductees, but arrest, persecute, and punish these offenders, these criminals, until they are named and shamed, until they're used as scapegoats to, deter further attacks, we might just see another major insecurity challenge in the hands of government. And so we're hoping that after this release, like the governors forum, all the governors in the country met all through last night and trying to see how they can forestall further attacks. We're hoping that that will be the focus, hopefully, after all these students are released back to their families.
Phil Ihaza, thank you so much for that update, joining us there live from Abuja, Nigeria. While staying in the country, insecurity is rife in other parts of Nigeria too, particularly at the community level. Competition for pasture and scarce resources has often led to deadly confrontations between herders and pastoralists. Tese Makende takes a closer look now from the central Nigerian city of Jos.
Like many members of the Fulani tribe, 45-year-old Ibrahim Idris is a cattle herder. He lives on the outskirts of Jos in north-central Nigeria. Recent violence against the Fulani has badly affected his livelihood, but he says others have suffered more.
In this community, all households were previously burnt completely. Our cows were stolen. Personally, I lost 5 cows. Other tribes were the perpetrators. If they were not seen, the blame would be attributed to the Fulani. Just recently, over 300 cows were killed and 6 children also killed, just like that.
In a report, Amnesty International says more than 3,000 people were killed between 2016 and 2018. Some of the crimes do appear to have been carried out by other members of the Fulani tribe. As access to resources such as water, land and pasture gets harder, there are worries that attacks by other tribes will continue. But prominent members of the community say claims about them being killers have led to stigma that is hard to bear.
No sleep, no peace of mind. Our children can't go to school. Wherever we go, we are labeled as criminals and killers. In Nigeria, there is no tribe without mischievous people, but the Fulanese have been branded as criminals and killers. Even parliamentarians are legislating against us.
The government rejects that claim, but has become increasingly worried about a situation that seems to be getting worse.
People here say several of their loved ones have been killed, their cattle and other properties destroyed just because they are Fulani. They say they want justice and an end to insecurity in the country.
Security experts say the government needs to do more to address the problem.
There are several sides to this. We have the religious side, we have the political side, and we have the environmental side. Okay, but beyond that, the government has to show some willpower in bringing all the players, key players involved to achieving a common front. Just, clearly branding an entire group of people as mischief makers may not be the way forward. We may need to actually fish out the perpetrators of this injustice under whatever guise they operate and bring them to book.
The Fulani's cattle are an important source of food and other byproducts, including leather. But the community has serious issues to address before it can truly contribute to the nation's economy. Tese Makende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Well, let's bring you some analysis now on the security situation in Nigeria. We are joined from Lagos by security expert Dixon Osajie. Dixon, from abductions to these deadly confrontations between herders and pastoralists, as well as sporadic attacks from the likes of Boko Haram, why does insecurity continue to be such a major and persistent challenge in parts of Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Lindy. It's really a worrisome situation here in Nigeria, where we've been experiencing high spate of insecurity from terrorism, international terrorism, transnational terrorism, banditry, kidnapping. It's really on the high rise. How I'm going to say that the government must be held accountable for negligence to duty, because when you look at the root cause analysis of all these incidents, you will discover that we have no political will to contend with this incident, and that is why we are doing so well negatively from the international rating in terrorism, being the third most dangerous country in the world. But for me, if the government are very serious to curtail with this incident, they need to go back to the drawing board and carry out a national vulnerability analysis of our crime-prone environment, because the criminal elements are taking the vulnerability of our security agency and they are capitalizing on such vulnerability, and they are making waves and succeeding in their attacks and mayhems. Last 2 weeks, we see the Zamfara State governor went into negotiation with the enemy. You know, it's very, very unfair for you to bargain with the devil. Bargaining with the devil comes with two death consequences: emotional entrapment and psychological trap. Most of these guys have seen that our government are so weak to bargain with them, and that is why the security situation is deteriorating and expanding, because they believe they can strike the government and come back to negotiation. That is why I've advised the government on many fora that they must not negotiate with the enemy, because negotiating with the enemy is a sign of weakness.
Well, Dixon, I mean, we are talking right now just as the government is trying to investigate what's happened in this latest case of abduction. These incidents are becoming increasingly frequent, and consistently schools are the target. I mean, how best can government tackle this particular problem?
Oh, thank you very much, Lindy. You know, sometimes we need to learn from our previous mistake. 3 months ago, about 300 students were carted away in the hometown of a presiding president of our country, Katsina State. And I had expected that most of these governors in this crime-prone state would have carried out an assessment of what transpired in Katsina State, because the Kankara incident should have sent a warning to other state governors to carry out an assessment of our secondary schools, our pupils, our children, our students. They are really, really devastated and living in pain, going to school to acquire knowledge with fear, because security is defeated when you live in a state of fear or being coerced. But I will also advise them that with the incident that took place yesterday in abduction of this school student Kangara, they need to come back to the drawing board. We need to also look at psychological deterrence. We are not looking at psychological deterrence here in our country. Psychological deterrence is putting the enemy in fear for them to know that they are being monitored. We have people here in Nigeria, Lindy, that have private jets. A lot of Nigerians have a lot of private jets. What is it going to cost our leaders to purchase surveillance helicopters to carry out a surveillance patrol in all these crime-prone areas? If they can purchase 4 helicopters per state to carry out a consistent surveillance patrol, that will dissipate and mitigate the plans of the enemy, because they will believe they are under watch 24/7. If we are ready, we are ready. I don't think our government are ready to contain with security situation, because security is achievable, Lindy. It's really achievable.
And Dixon, it's not as though Nigeria has to go it alone, right? I mean, surely there are regional authorities that Nigeria can cooperate with to sustainably make West Africa and the entire Sahel region more safe and more secure.
Oh yeah. Nigerian, formerly, when I was growing up, I was being told that Nigeria is the giant of Africa, and I was so proud of my country, because we failed to follow the trace of history. When we follow the trace of history, we'll be able to curtail with crime as it comes, you know, because Nigerian right now, as I'm talking to you, is on a negative limelight. At any given time, we are on a negative limelight. If we don't contain with the state of insecurity, I want to assure you, it's not a prayer point, that Nigeria will be one of the most dangerous countries in the world. But God forbid, if our government are ready to rise up to the task, it's going really to mitigate these criminal activities. Because when you go into our borderline are porous. The porosity of our borderline is giving rooms for these criminal elements to migrate from other African countries, other war-prone countries to Nigeria, because they've seen the vulnerability of our security agencies. They've also seen the loopholes in our borderline protection, because a borderless nation is a no nation. So for me, if Nigeria picked up its security mechanism and architecture, look into deterrence mechanism, look into demobilizing and de-radicalizing most of these criminal elements, and also our government needs to also look into 3 foundations: religious foundation, educational foundation, and also letting people understand that Christians and Muslims must live as one. The education foundation must be very, very solid, and family foundation as well, because most of these criminal elements, Linda, they are from various homes. We need to let our world know that security starts from our homes, and we must train our brothers and sisters, our children, in the limelight of peace, because if we don't preach peace, security situation will continue to deteriorate, and it's going to cause a lot of damages to Nigeria, Africa, and the world.
Dixon Osajia, thank you so much for your time and that analysis, joining us there live from Lagos, Nigeria. And as we heard there from our analyst, one of the major concerns for Nigeria is the frequent abductions of school children in the country. In the latest incident, 27 school children are still missing at the moment. Here's more on this from Chao Mgono.
The aftermath of yet another attack on a learning institution in Nigeria. The government science college in Kagara in Niger State is the latest to be targeted by gunmen. Students and members of staff are among those abducted.
We're praying for them to be released soon. We're calling on the police to provide more security so that this doesn't happen again.
Another incident occurred today, Wednesday, the 17th, 2021, at about 2 a.m. at Government Science College, Kagara, where 27 students, 3 staff, and 12 members of their families were kidnapped. Unfortunately, one student was shot dead.
A statement from President Muhammadu Buhari's office condemned the attack. The president also said he had dispatched top security officials to coordinate rescue operations and meet relatives of the missing persons.
Call on the federal government to deploy all resources while we are looking at all options, both kinetic and non-kinetic, to ensure the safe return of victims of both incidences.
So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the incident, although it is suspected that bandits from the area are behind it. Apart from security challenges posed by the Boko Haram jihadist group, Nigeria's northwest and central states have been grappling with gangs who kidnap locals and demand ransom from relatives. Chom Rono, CGTN.
You are watching Africa Live. Time now for a short break. Still ahead, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls for the fair COVID-19 vaccine distribution plan. And archaeologists unearth an ancient Egyptian brewery believed to be 5,000 years old.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for a global COVID-19 vaccination plan. He's warned that vaccine inequalities are putting the world's health and economies at risk. Speaking to the UN Security Council on Wednesday, Guterres said 130 countries have yet to acquire a single vaccine dose. Li Jingyi has more.
Fair and even distribution of COVID-19 vaccines was the focus of attention at the UN, and the world body's chief made clear how badly he thinks the international community is failing to address the challenge.
The rollout of COVID-19 vaccines is generating hope. But at this critical moment, vaccine equity is the biggest moral test before the global community. We must ensure that everybody, everywhere, can be vaccinated as soon as possible.
The UN chief voiced alarm that just 10 nations have administered 75% of doses so far, and 130 countries have had none at all. Guterres called for a global vaccination plan. He suggested that G20 nations set up a special task force to lay out plans and implement them. China says it would do its part to help ensure the equal distribution of vaccines. Foreign Minister Wang Yi reaffirmed that China will donate 10 million doses to COVAX, a global initiative led by the WHO to ensure equitable access. Beijing has already provided vaccine to 53 developing countries.
China's commitment to international vaccine cooperation is not about achieving geopolitical goals or reaping economic benefits or attaching political strengths. What concerns us most is ensuring that vaccines become accessible and affordable public goods for people of all countries, namely a people's vaccine.
Britain's Foreign Secretary called for temporary ceasefires to allow vaccinations. It's estimated that more than 160 million people were at risk in conflict zones.
Local ceasefires are going to be essential to enable life-saving vaccinations to take place, and they're essential to protect the brave health workers and humanitarian workers.
The United States, meanwhile, promised to pay its obligations to the World Health Organization, which stand at more than $200 million.
The United States believes that multilateralism, the United Nations, the World Health Organization are essential, not just as an effective international COVID-19 health and humanitarian response, but also building stronger global health capacity and security for the future.
Li Jingyi, CGTN.
Senegal has received its first batch of COVID-19 vaccines from China. Senegalese President Macky Sall has expressed confidence in the Chinese-made vaccines. He was speaking at the Blaise Diagne International Airport in Dakar. Senegal has authorized the Sinopharm vaccine for emergency use, but is yet to announce when the rollout will begin. Vulnerable groups, however, including healthcare workers, will receive the first doses of the vaccine.
I say this with pride. We are entering a new stage in our common fight against our common enemy, a stage bearing hope with the receipt of these 200,000 doses of anti-COVID vaccines acquired from the Chinese firm Sinopharm and conveyed from Beijing by our national company Air Senegal. Excellency Ambassador, be my interpreter to my friend President Xi Jinping to convey my sincere thanks.
South Africa has begun its COVID-19 vaccine rollout, with healthcare workers being top priority. President Cyril Ramaphosa was among the first group of South Africans to receive the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in Khayelitsha in Cape Town on Wednesday. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
There was much relief as South Africa's COVID-19 vaccine rollout kicked off. The program was delayed when it was found that the AstraZeneca vaccine from India was not effective against the local variant.
On the 29th of January, your vaccine works. That Monday, you hear that that AstraZeneca may not work, and you start to see what you can do. How can I bring this vaccine? How can we bring this vaccine to South Africans 17 days later, and only miss the 2 days of the vaccine rollout?
Health authorities were forced to find an alternative and turned to the single-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It has a 57% efficacy rate against South Africa's 501Y V2 strain. President Cyril Ramaphosa and several healthcare workers were the first recipients.
It gives us another layer of protection in the fight against this disease, and I'd encourage everyone to please take the vaccine. This vaccine gives us hope.
28% of South Africa's 1.25 million healthcare workers have so far registered for the vaccine, but just 80,000 shots were flown into the country so far.
Very excited. I'm absolutely delighted that the vaccines are in the country and that they're already being administered. I've been following the research behind the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I'm very confident it's a great vaccine.
The first round of vaccines will go mainly to healthcare workers in the state facilities. Many others still have a long wait.
We've lost so many colleagues from COVID-19, and when you come here, it's like you are just putting yourself in the deep end. But somebody needs to do the job. If I die like a soldier while saving my people, let it be.
More doses of the Johnson & Johnson's and Pfizer vaccines are expected to trickle into the country in the next coming weeks, as South Africa tries to immunize frontline workers before a third wave hits. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, staying in South Africa, the government says it plans to share its 1 million AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine doses with other African countries through the African Union. This is after the country suspended the rollout of the AstraZeneca shots this month. The suspension came after a small preliminary trial showed that the jab offered minimal protection against the country's COVID-19 variant. Angela Coppola picks up the story.
With the AstraZeneca jab priced at over $5 per shot, South Africa appears to have paid the Serum Institute of India a premium, given the going price of $3.
AstraZeneca doses which we purchased have been offered to the African Union platform, which we're part of, and they will be distributed to the countries that already indicated interest, that do not have this particular challenge of this variant. There will therefore be no wasteful and fruitless expenditure.
Authorities plan to use the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in its place when vaccinating frontline healthcare workers. South Africa's Medical Research Council has permission to use 300,000 of these vaccines on healthcare workers as part of a vaccine trial.
Johnson & Johnson applied for emergency use authorization and is expected that this will be granted. In the meantime, we've also registered a protocol under what we call Sisonke. This protocol will allow us to survey the vaccination of healthcare workers and will further add to our understanding on the impact of mass vaccination, and are looking out for breakthrough infections.
There was some concern initially that South Africa would struggle to find the vaccines needed to quickly vaccinate the targeted population.
We have also managed to successfully secure 9 million doses of Johnson & Johnson, and the first batch of it will be delivered within the course of this week, and of course the announcement will be made about the starting of the vaccination. We have heard also that 500,000 doses are expected over the next 4 weeks, and supplemented by those from Pfizer, 20 million. I can also just say that in discussion, we have actually involved enough dosages to be able to cover all the people that need to be covered in South Africa.
The vaccination program is back on track again. Now we hope to avoid the third and fourth waves and get that population immunity. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, a number of African countries are trying to contain second waves of COVID-19 infections. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is urging governments to follow its recommendations in combating the spread of the disease. The Public Health Agency of the African Union says countries that have not reported cases of the COVID-19 variants should start administering the AstraZeneca vaccine. The vaccine was found to be 66% effective against the virus, but South Africa halted rollout after initial tests showed it had limited efficacy against a COVID-19 variant that emerged in that country. But for nations that have detected COVID-19 variants, the Africa CDC is calling for a scale-up of response mechanisms.
For countries that have not reported the circulation of the SARS-CoV-2 variant, that is the N501Y-V2 variant, we recommend that they proceed with the rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And if you all recall, the initial studies that were done reported an efficacy of about 66% of this vaccine, which is above the 50% threshold. Second recommendation from Africa CDC, for countries that have reported the circulation of the SARS-CoV-2 variant, we recommend the acceleration of their preparedness to introduce all vaccines that have received emergency use authorization or approval by the regulatory authorities. Consideration should be given to the effectiveness of the vaccine against the variant, that is the N501V2 variant, or any other circulating SARS-CoV-2 variants in the country. All countries are then expected to expand their capacity or capabilities to conduct a genomic sequencing surveillance. And Africa CDC can support this effort.
Well, health officials in Somalia are among those across the continent that are battling a second wave of coronavirus cases. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo tells us more from Mogadishu.
Health officials are investigating if a new coronavirus variant is responsible for an outbreak recently witnessed in the Somali capital Mogadishu and other regions of the country. Several people have died since the start of the year, raising concerns that the second wave currently being experienced in the Horn of African nation could be deadlier than the first one witnessed in early 2020.
We have noted a big difference between the first and the second wave. We have sent samples abroad for further analysis to know the exact kind of variant we are dealing with. While we await for the confirmation, I urge the public to follow all the guidelines issued by the health authorities.
On Tuesday, the country recorded 100 new infections, the highest number since mid-last year. The health ministry says the cases were confirmed from a sample of more than 5,000 tests. Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble, in his address to the nation, urged the public to exercise caution.
In recent days, we have lost some of our citizens to the disease. Some others are struggling with the disease. To the Somali people, both at home and abroad, exercise caution and be part of the solution aimed at preventing and eliminating this deadly disease.
The federal government has not yet announced any new measures restricting incoming travelers from countries where the new coronavirus strain has been identified. However, authorities in the Puntland state have banned the arrival of passengers coming from Europe and the United States, while urging those planning to return to postpone their travels. Meanwhile, despite a resurgence of coronavirus cases, the opposition has called for a mass demonstration in the capital on Friday to protest against the delayed elections. The government is worried such a gathering could pose a major health risk for a nation with an already weak health system.
Large gatherings and meetings in public places should not happen. Health authorities, intellectuals, clerics, and all stakeholders should take a key role in raising awareness. As a government, we will channel all our resources to tackling the disease and providing care to our citizens.
Elsewhere, health officials are restocking critical supplies, including oxygen cylinders, in 2 of Mogadishu's COVID-19 treatment centers in anticipation of a major upsurge in the number of new cases. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Now, since the start of the coronavirus pandemic last year, there has been a rise in the use of robots to help limit contact between people. In Nigeria, a group of students have built a robot to assist healthcare workers. Although the project is still in its initial stages, the students hope the robot will one day help hospitals remotely treat COVID-19 patients.
Dubbed MyRobot, this robot is a remote-controlled cabinet on wheels. It is slowly being modified to perform tasks normally carried out by doctors in person. The creators are a team from the Gliston International Academy in Nigeria's capital, Abuja.
We tried to figure out a solution to that particular problem, because without the healthcare workers, who would be the people taking care of COVID-19 patients? So MyRobot was born because we were looking for a way to reduce the physical contact between healthcare workers and infected COVID-19 patients.
For now, though, the robot can only carry medication, so patients would self-administer while a nurse watches over the camera.
Right now, we are working on upgrading of MyRobot to meet up to international standard, whereby when you see it, you can put your money on it and buy it.
And I hope that it would not just stop at this COVID-19 pandemic. Other infectious diseases can also be curbed using MyRobot, like Ebola, Lassa fever, and all these other infectious viruses.
The students hope to make MyRobot commercially available one day. Chamrono, CGTN.
A quick reminder of our top stories this hour. In Nigeria, a student has been killed and at least 42 people abducted following Wednesday's attack on a school in north-central Niger State. Local officials say at least 27 students are among those still missing. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for a global COVID-19 vaccination plan. He's warned that vaccine inequalities are putting the world's health and economies at risk. Speaking to the Security Council, Guterres said there are 130 countries which haven't yet acquired a single vaccine dose. And Senegal has received its first batch of COVID-19 vaccines from China. Senegalese President Macky Sall has expressed confidence in the Chinese-made vaccines. Senegal has authorized the Sinopharm vaccine for emergency use, but is yet to announce when rollout will begin. And coming up in your business news. Former employees of South Africa Express team up to buy the troubled airline. And some of the contenders for this year's Africa Prize for Engineering Innovations.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
In your business news, the International Monetary Fund has called on Nigeria to devise ways to ramp up its economy, starting with cutting its oil dependence. That's the outcome of the Washington-based lender's 2020 Article 4 staff consultation to Nigeria. The review shows that the country's recovery from recession may be slow, as CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports from Abuja.
Nigeria has been grappling with the devastating impacts of the coronavirus. Its economy has been on a decline since real GDP contracted by 3.2% in 2020, fueled by the falling oil prices and COVID-19 lockdown. The West African nation depends on crude oil for nearly 90% of its export revenue, and much of that has been cut off. Now the IMF is encouraging Nigeria to focus on economic reforms that support sustainable revenue generation. But it won't be a walk in the park for a country like Nigeria, with several factors limiting its growth.
Our institutions are different, our cultures, our environment, our realities are different. If we're a little more ingenious, the IMF will have little reason to make these recommendations to us. In the past, we have seen how they have recommended structural adjustment policy in the era of the military, and we saw how that plundered us into an economic tailspin, how our exchange rate spiraled downwards, resulting in our inability to compete very well in the international market and affecting our balance of trade overall.
In suggesting what they're suggesting, they are not putting into consideration that we have heavy security issues that we're struggling with. They are not also looking at the situation that we have a lot of nepotism going on in the country and so much corruption.
Issues like double-digit inflation and falling per capita income continue to threaten Nigeria's growth, and government's buffers haven't had significant impact on the shocks from the pandemic.
It is also worsened by the level of insecurity that has been existing in the country, which has affected virtually everything in the country. The insecurity is been worse ever that we have ever experienced, and so it's affecting agricultural production, it is affecting movements of goods and services, it's affecting movement of human beings, and so to that extent, the economy is suffering.
IMF projects that Nigeria's recovery might be very slow under the current policies. Real GDP growth in 2021 is expected to hit a positive 1.5% and recover to its pre-pandemic level only in 2022. Such policies entail huge public debt service payments that leave limited fiscal room for crucial social and infrastructural spending.
We keep hearing stories, or we keep reading reports about government trying to pay attention to some of these things, creating infrastructure fund. We see the central bank now and again releasing funds to commercial banks to fund the agricultural sector. We see, all kinds of schemes being developed by government to fund entrepreneurs. All these are salutary, but something tells me, or like we do know, something tells me that most of the time some of these funds are diverted. The problem is the diversion. In terms of policy formulation and policy direction, we can hardly fault government.
Economic watchers say government's diversification efforts will spur economic recovery. That and strategic policy adjustment reforms which would help navigate the economic downturn towards an upward trajectory. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
South African Express, the sister airline of struggling South African Airways, has been sold off to Fly SAX. The South African-owned consortium bought the liquidated airline for $3.4 million. SA Express has been under provisional liquidation since April last year, but aviation experts have cast doubt over the deal, which is expected to conclude over the next 3 months. CGTN's Sumitra Naidu has the details.
FlySax is a consortium made up of mostly former SA Express employees. Since the demise of SA Express, their employees decided to buy the airline. They crowdfunded the purchase with an anchor investor.
I think that the airline personally is beyond saving. It's also extremely interesting to work out where, if anywhere, the money, the so-called 50 million rand that is being expected to be paid by guarantee in cash to take over the airline is coming from. Because as far as I am aware, there were no hard assets attached to the sale. They're essentially buying intangible assets like the roots of the brand, the AOC, which is the Aircraft Operator Certificate and licenses. And those are worth nothing.
SA Express owes creditors $66 million. Another $10 million in back taxes is owed. Staff wages since last year, amounting to around $12 million, are yet to be paid.
The airline's liabilities exceed over 900 million. Now, these are known creditors. And its asset base, as per our valuation, was sitting at about 113 million. So it is insolvent. And the provisions of the Insolvency Act is that we must then try and realize best value. The business rescue process required further funding of the airline, and that was unsuccessful.
A share sale agreement is expected to be signed with government that will then pave the way for FlySax to meet its capital adequacy requirements.
FlySax Pty Limited is a private company backed by certain anchor investors. Those anchor investors could be the shareholding or the grouping of FlySax Pty Limited. We're not privy to that. It could be or it could not be the former employees. We truly deal with what the offer is and from which entity, but the shareholding of that particular private entity is indeed private.
SA Express is the first of South Africa's state airlines to go under liquidation. Its sister airline, South African Airways, narrowly escaped liquidation through government bailouts. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
The shortlist for this year's Africa Prize for Engineering Innovation is out. The contenders include a digital financial services solution that audits patrons based on their online social profiles and a water-soluble bioplastic made using plant waste material. There's also sustainable packaging developed from banana stems to help battle plastic pollution and deforestation. The award recognizes ambitious African innovators developing scalable engineering solutions to local challenges.
Nigerian national Yusuf Belisanmi demonstrates how Shivent, a low-cost, non-electronic and non-invasive ventilator works. It was developed in less than a year and is designed to be used by non-specialist health workers in remote places in the world to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Belisanmi and his team are at UK's Loughborough University and have been shortlisted for the Africa Prize 2021.
There's a significant demand for oxygen supply globally. When you have a system that requires less oxygen, it makes it much more efficient for hospitals to run. With our systems, we can go as low as 5 LPM, which reduces that cost to as low as 100 cylinders of oxygen in contrast to 300.
The Shivent utilizes a specially designed bottle with 3D printed components and plastic jar along with ventilator-sized tubing and face masks available off the shelf at a cost of less than $100. Although the selling price of the device is yet to be determined, it will cost only a fraction of the cost of the average $2,000 price of a regular bubble CPAPs.
The venturi blends air with oxygen, and then that goes through the expiration pipe. The patient inhales and then exhales into the expiration pipe, which then goes back into the bubbler. And that's, you can see that creates pressure. That pressure, of course, then enables, keeps the airways open, as well as reduces the work of breathing of the patient.
6 of the 16-strong Africa Prize 2021 shortlist are female innovators. One of them, Faith Adesemowo, developed Social Lender, a digital financial services solution that provides immediate access to formal financial services to those with little to no traditional access to banks.
A lot of people are not financially included. In Africa, this is a huge problem by itself. We have millions and millions of Africans who fall into this category. So the idea is these people need access to formal financial services, and we're there to provide that access.
The Social Lender partners with various financial service providers to offer facilities based on the social reputation scoring. It uses a preparatory algorithm to perform a social audit of the users based on their mobile and social media, allowing them to access banking facilities.
We score that individual, and based on that score, it's an alternative credit score, which we call a social reputation score. Based on the score, that individual can now access services on our platform with the partners that are already on our platform.
Launched by the Royal Academy of Engineering in 2014, the annual Africa Awards offers commercialization support to the innovators who are transforming their local communities. It has a track record of identifying engineering entrepreneurs with significant potential for social change. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Facebook will block news content from being read and shared in its newsfeed in Australia. The latest move is seen as drawing a line in the sand against a proposed Australian law that would require Facebook and Google to pay the country's news publishers for content. The move was announced in a blog post and represents a divergence in responses among the big tech giants under attack by news publishers. Publishers are blaming the companies for destroying their advertising business. The Australian federal government has said it plans to put the legislation to a vote in the coming weeks. It will effectively force Google and Facebook to strike deals with media companies or have fees set for them.
The Treasurer has said he's had a discussion with Mark Zuckerberg this morning. The point I've simply made is the proposition that if Facebook were to operate in a mode where effectively all content from organisations with a fact-checking process, with employed journalists, with editorial policies is not available on Facebook, then that will surely over time call into question the reliability of information on the platform. We've had discussions with all of the parties, all of the stakeholders, digital platforms, news media businesses. That will continue, but what will also continue is we'll continue with the process of legislating the code. The principle is very clear. Google and Facebook are important parts of the digital ecosystem in Australia. They're important parts of the economy. We've made it clear that we want them to continue operating here, but we've also made it clear that if you do business in Australia, you need to comply with the law of the land in Australia.
Archaeologists in Egypt have unearthed what is believed to be a 5,000-year-old ancient Egyptian brewery. Now, the discovery was made in Sohag, a city 500 kilometers south of Cairo. Experts believe it could be the oldest brewery in the world that had an industrial-scale production capacity. Here's Adel Al-Mahri with more.
An Egyptian-American excavation mission has discovered a remarkable ancient Egyptian factory. In the city of Abydos, they found a huge royal brewery that dates back to the year 3100 BC.
In 2013, we discovered a huge number of pottery jars which had traces of beer that ancient Egyptians used. Our mission wondered just where all this beer had come from. It wasn't until 2020 that we started getting answers. We knew that beer was used for sacrifice and funeral rituals. Then we realized that there was a factory.
Archaeologists have unearthed 8 individual brewery structures that were standing on fire legs at that manufacturing site. The production capacity of the ancient factory is estimated to have been 22,400 liters of beer. Experts from the Egyptian High Council of Antiquities, as well as New York and Princeton universities, believe that other breweries could have also operated at the site.
A factory of that size gives an indication of the power and resources that the kings of the First and Second Dynasty had at the time. This is considered to be the first royal brewery in ancient Egypt. We've discovered other breweries before, but this is the first royal one, and it's the biggest brewery known in the ancient world.
Abydos is where ancient Egyptians believed the dead would transit into the afterlife. Royal funerals and sacrifice rituals used to be held there. Beer offerings to the ancient Egyptian gods formed a key part of those religious ceremonies. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.